Felix. I think it's the drivers. Wait. I think it's the drivers. Bluetooth. Bluetooth. It's not connecting with Bluetooth. Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my respectful obeisances and wishes to Prabhupada and wishes to do there. So we are expecting His Grace SRIVAS VANACARI. Can you hear me? Can any one of you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So we are expecting His Grace and SRIVAS VANACARI to come. So while we wait for him, we pray some bhajan while we wait. Believing he should be able to join any moment from now. Hare Krishna. So I'm deciding to play a Bhakti Sastri course given by Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, so we can listen.
The following is a class on the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, first canto, 5th chapter, text number 28, given by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, recorded on the 9th of August, 1974, in Vrindavan, India. It's
Tam Sharat Pra Vrishika Vritu Hare Tam Sharat Pra Vrishika Vritu Hare Vishinvato Menu Savang Yasho Malam Vishinvato Menu Savang Yasho Malam Sanakityamanang Munibir Mahatmabir Sanakityamanang Munibir Mahatmabir Bhakti Pravittatma Rajastamopaha Bhakti Pravittatma Rajastamopaha. Translation. Thus during two seasons, the rainy season and autumn, I had the opportunity to hear these great-souled sages constantly chant the unadulterated glories of the Lord Hare. As my devotional service began, the coverings of the modes of passion and ignorance vanished.
Proper lecture on SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM. So whenever it comes in.
We are now covered by the modes of material nature. Trigunamai, Trigunas, Tattva Rajas Tama. So, Mukti means get out of this entanglement of the Trigunas. That is not. We are suffering different modes.
Hare Krishna devotees. We just got a message from his Grace Sri VANACARI. I was caught up in a Goslo somewhere, but he should be joining us in a short while. So while we wait for him, so we're listening to this lecture from Srila Prabhupada.
Secretary Jen Psaki says Biden will meet with veterans, including some of the thousands
Okay, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
practice during the wars in the Middle
Time
East.
explained.
Visit the fourth
Karanam Gunasanga also, Sadasha Guruni Dharma. There are different types of bodies. From PC point of view, there are 6,400,000 forms. And they are
plans to expand access to healthcare and for veterans affected by exposures during military service. PR News in Washington. And Secretary Lloyd Austin is ordering a huge multi facility in Hawaii. Facility leaked
So,
petroleum,
it is more or less, there are 8,400,000.
living and working nearby were sickened.
So, in order to get out of this limitation of birth and death, we require to be free from the
Severe storms released on Monday, tens of thousands of people lost electricity. Websites
So,
were
here, Narad said that within 4 months, there are 6 seasons. There is summer season,
stations.
autumn, and there is winter, fall. This way, there are 6 seasons. So, the same people during the
Hare Krishna.
Sunny and cooler day today, but there's a chance of snow after midnight. Accumulations up to an inch overnight. Below 30.
Salika Prabhu.
Okay. Just a minute.
Hare Krishna. I'll be joining you on my computer in a few minutes. I'm using my phone, but I'll join you in the computer in a few minutes.
It's okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll join you in a few minutes.
So you want to continue speaking from the car, or we should continue hearing Prabhupada before you get to your computer? Can you continue to speak
Yeah,
from
I think we should continue with Prabhupada. When I get into the computer, then we start.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, because the connection on the phone is not so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Those are people's souls. They are entangled with the limited circle of material enjoyment. But Mahatma is described in the Bhagavad Gita. Mahatmanas tumam prathu devi pratiti Mahatmas are not interested within this material world. They are not under the influence of the external energy. Of course, nowadays it is sometimes politicians are called Mahatmas. But that is not the purpose of Mahatma. Mahatma is not interested in politics or sociology. They are material things or philanthropy. They are interested in the Supreme, Brahma, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan is Shabda. They are interested. Especially, Mahatma is he is interested with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Every Krishna Bhakta, Krishna conscious person is Mahatma, real Mahatma. How it is, Krishna says, Mahatma Nustuman Prati Priti Masida Bhajanti Anandamani. That is Mahatma. Mahatma does not mean that if you dress yourself with a satin collared cloth and have something here, that is not Mahatma. No. Mahatma is he who Devi Prakriti Master is not under the influence of the external energy. Devi Prakriti means there are two Prakritis, two natures, internal and external. Internal energy is spiritual energy and external energy is material. So Mahatmas, they are not under material energy. Mahatma is under the material energy. They are entangled with these three gunas. Ratagun, Rajagun, Tamagun. The west is Tamagun, and Ahmedya is Rajagun, and the topmost goodness is Satagun. So, even in Satagun, that is also entangled. Rajagun, Tamagun is certainly entangled. But if Rajagun, if one is situated in the Satagun, Satagun means perfect Brahman. Satta, Samo, Damo, Tikha, Aryava, Jnanam, Vijnanam, Astikam, Brahma, Karma, Svabhav. You become a perfect Brahman, quality. Still, it is bondless. Bondless in this way that if you become a Brahmana, you think yourself, now I have got so much knowledge, Vedic knowledge, I speak truth, Satta, I can control my senses, Satta, Samo, Damo, I can control my mind, I have got knowledge, I can tolerate. So, all these qualities, what becomes bound up. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches, Naham Vipranatanaratati. I'm not a Kshatriya, I'm not a Vaishya, I'm not a Shudra. You see, this is called Sarvapadi Vinimuktam. It means to become a Brahmana. You see, that is Upadi, designation. So, although there is bondage in the Satagun, Uddam Rachanti Sattva, you can be promoted to the higher planetary system, but that is also bondage. Say, Brahma Bhuvana Lokan Puradavatinoto. If you remain within this material world, if you are promoted to the highest planetary system, Brahma Loka, Sattva Loka, still we have to accept the material bondage, the Dharma Mitra. Brahma, he also dies. Also, he has got very, very long duration of life. He also dies. Krishna therefore recommends Jnana Nivattante Tatthamam Param. If you come to my place, then you are no more under the laws of birth, death, old age, and disease. Tatta Deham Punarjanma Naiti Mami Tipo. That should be the aim of it. There are others who who are aspiring to go to the heavenly planet or Sattaloka or Brahmaloka. But Krishna says, Matjajino pi janti ma, janti deva prata devan, janti prata. Matjajino pi janti ma. Therefore, the consciousness movement is that why we should go to the heavenly planet or Brahmaloka or any other material planet. We shall go directly to the abode of Krishna, Mukta. That's the name of the abode. So that aim you can be by practicing Bhakti Yoga. That is mentioned. Bhakti Pravidya Atma Radastamo Maha. Rajastama, so long one is rooted in the modes of passion and ignorance, there is no hope. There is no hope. But when one comes to the platform of Bhakti, there is a hope of transcendence. The Bhakti Yoga is above Satugun. In the Satugun, in the modes of goodness, you can become a nice Brahman. But simply by becoming a nice Brahmana, you are not free from the material body. When you become a pure Vaishnava, then you are free from body. And to become Vaishnava, you require this devotion, bhakti. Bhakti. Immediately beginning of bhakti means Rajastama Maha. One who is situated, even beginning, is above the Rajastama. Is situated last Kamuluba Nashtaprayesu Avadreshu Nityam Bhagavatasu. Here the same thing is described that Sankirtamanam Muniki Mahatma. Sankirtaman. We have to hear the Sankirtan, not from professional men. That is that we do hear Sankirtan from the professional men. Professional men makes Sankirtan as the means of livelihood. That's like people do some business or work to get some money to make this life. Similarly, if somebody gets the Sankirtan as the means of livelihood, that will not help. In fact, go on hearing Sankirtan from such professional men for millions of years. This is well, not Rajasthamoma. Cannot get out of the bondage of. Therefore, we have to hear from Sankirtamanam Munini Mahatma. Mahatma. Mahatma means Mahatma Practice. Bhajanti Ananda Manusha. Mahatma. Who are finished this material business. Simply their interest in Krishna and without or forward, take the Mahatma forward. Here, just like Narad Muni in his previous birth, he heard from this Mahatma, their devotees only for 4 months. It is stated at the time. Pravishnavit Hitu. Saratanatam Duditu. He heard the association was. And the result was Vishinnatame Anusavang Jasu Amala. Krishna's glorification, Amala, without any spot, without any single glory. That is real good. That's not a good name without any material attribute. So when Krishna's glories are chanted, that is not anything of the material world. Just like Narottam Das Thakur says, Golokera Prema Dhanna Hari Nama Sound. This Pranam Sankirtan, that is not any vibration of this material world. That is Golokera Prema.
Stop doing that. It's a very sad state of affairs and it's very worrying actually for the future of Turkey. He's a former employee of RT or Russia Today. Johnny, thank you for speaking with us.
I'm also hearing from some of you.
That's not my best friend. We met several years ago playing video games. Is from a large city in the Ramaraj. Doesn't usually follow politics much, but this has changed his perspective on it. It's perked him up. He's now looking for ways to get a work visa in other countries. He's looking for ways to leave the country, and I get the impression from just him.
We'll be back with more in a moment. I'm Jen White. This is 1A on WAMU and NQ.
Either you say Vishwa Vishalale or Samsara Dhavana. Matter is the same. Ankudas Thakur says that. Vishwa Vishalale Divanisi Kiya Jale Dorivare Nakoinu Kupa.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Salika Prabhu, this is my humble obeisances.
The international community may not be sending soldiers, financial penalties, sanctions, asset seizures, and isolation from the global economy effectively constitute a form of economic war against Russia.
Now, then we can start.
That's on the next On Point. This afternoon at 2 on WITF.
Support comes from Penn State Montalto.
So you can start.
Okay, thank you very much. And sorry for being late. I was in some traffic to a place where I'm going to give the class, and the traffic was too bad. So I'm sorry, we are 20 minutes behind time or 18 minutes behind time, but we'll make it up. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Narachaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nashtapraya Subhadresu Nitya Bhagavatam Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. So we are reading from the SRIMAD Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 13, entitled Dhritarashtra Quits Home. And today we are treating text 31. So we first go through the Sanskrit. Ajata Shatru Krita Maitro Hutangnir Vipranmat Natva Tilago Bhumim Rukmai Griham Bravishta Guruvannaya Nachapasya Pitaro Sobalim Chaha Ajata Satru Krita Maitro Hutangnir Vipram Natva Tilago Bhumi Rukmai Griham Bravishta Guruvannaya Nachapasya Pitaro Sobalim Chaha Ajata Shatru Krita Maitro Hutangnir Vipram Natva Tilago Bhumi Rukmai Griham Bravishta Guruvannaya Na Chapasyayat Pitaro Sobhalim Chaha. Word for word translation. Ajata, never born. Shatru, enemy. Krita, having performed. Maitraha, worshipping the demigods. Huta Agni, and offering fuel in the fire. Vipran, the Brahmanas. Natwa, offering obeisances. Tilago Bhumi Rukmai, along with grains, cow, land, and gold. Griham, within the palace. Pravishta, having entered into Guru Vandanya for offering respect to the elderly members. Na did not. Cha also. Apasyat, see Pitaro, his uncles. Shobalim, Gandhari, Cha also. Translation. Maharaj Yudhishthira, whose enemy was never born, performed his daily morning duties by praying, offering fire sacrifice to the sun god, and offering obeisances, grains, cows, land, and gold to the Brahmanas. He then entered the palace to pay respect to the elderly. However, he could not find his uncles or aunt, the daughter of King Shubal. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Maharaj Yudhishthira was the most pious king because he personally practiced daily the pious duties for the householders. The householders are required to rise early in the morning, and after bathing, they should offer respects to the deities at home by prayers, by offering fuel in the sacred fire, by giving the Brahmanas in charity, land, cows, grains, and gold, etc. And at last, offering to the elderly members due respects and obeisances. One who is not prepared to practice injunctions prescribed in the Shastras cannot be a good man simply by book knowledge. Modern householders are practiced to different modes of life, namely to rise late and then take bad tea without any sort of cleanliness and without any purificatory practices, as mentioned above. The household children are taken to practice what the parents practice, and therefore the whole generation glides towards hell. Nothing good can be expected from them unless they associate with sadhus. Like Dhritarashtra, the materialistic person may take lessons from a sadhu like Vidura and thus be cleansed of the effects of modern life. Maharaj Yudhishthira, however, could not find in the palace his two uncles, namely Dhritarashtra and Vidura, along with Gandhari, the daughter of King Shubal. He was anxious to see them and therefore asked Sanjaya, the private secretary of Dhritarashtra. Om Gyana Timridasya Gyanan Gyana Shalakaya Chakshuram Litam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Bistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yukta Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavam Cha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunastam Bitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakam Vitam Scha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swaminiti Namine Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Sri Tatmane Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Iti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvase Sasuyavadi Pasachade Satarini. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namini Gauratize Namaha. Nityanando Vatutendur Vasuda Pranavalabaha Janavir Jivita Patir Krishna Prema Pradaprabhu Padmavati Sutta Srimam Sachirananda Purvajaha Mavum Mata Jagat Rakta Rakta Gaura Kanevaraha Advaitam Harinadvaita Racharyam Bhakti Shamshanat Bhaktavataram Sham Advaita Acharya Shraye Panchatattvamakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakti Shantikam Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Nama Pankajanabaya Nama Pankajamaline Nama Pankajanitraya Namaste Pankajagraye Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha Jagadhitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopita Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surato Pango Mama Madirgati Masarvasa Padam Bhujo Radha Mandana Mohano Divyadvindaranya Kalpadrumada Srimaradharkara Simhasanastao Srila Govinda Devo Prishyali Visevya Manos Marami Shrimam Rasa Rasaram Vivam Sivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswanai Gopi Gopinata Sriyestunaha Taptakan Chanagaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Mrisha Banusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Devi Krishnamai Prokta Radhika Paradevata Sarva Lakshmi Mai Sarvam Kanti Samohini Paraham Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation again. Maharaj Yudhishthira, whose enemy was never born, performed his daily morning duties by praying, offering fire sacrifice to the sun god, and offering obeisances, grains, cows, land, and gold to the Brahmanas. He then entered the palace to pay respects to the elderly. However, he could not find his uncles or aunt, the daughter of King Shubal. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum lagayete green yat kripatamahan vande Shri Guru Dina Taranam Paramanam Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Akanda Mandalakaram Vyaptayina Characharam Tatpadam Dashitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna. Everyone is welcome to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. And before we proceed to say something, we seek the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis so that we can say something meaningful, something that will enhance our own progress and probably for the benefit of the audience, especially my superiors who are on this platform. I need your blessings so that I can represent Srila Vyasadeva, who is the author of the Vedic scriptures. Today, the verse is telling us that Maharaj Yudhishthira, whose enemy was never born, performed his daily morning duties by praying, by offering fire sacrifice to the sun god, and offering obeisances, grains, cows, land, and gold to the Brahmanas. He then entered the palace to pay respects to the elderly. However, he could not find his uncles or aunt, the daughter of King Shubal. So the exalted position of Yudhishthira Maharaj is described in this verse. How exalted is Yudhishthira Maharaj? Here it is said that his enemy was never born. How can we say that Yudhishthira Maharaj's enemy was never born? Is it possible for anyone to live in this world without enemies? Is that possible? Because the material world is a place of duality. Black and white, good and bad, sweet and bitter, young and old, friends and enemies. So how can Yudhishthira Maharaj live in this world where his enemy was never born? Even when the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, or Lord Ram, or Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or Varahadev, or Narasimhadev, when they appear in this world, they had enemies. Ravana was the enemy of Lord Ram. Paundraka of Kashi was the enemy of Lord Krishna. Ramachandra Puri was an enemy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He found fault with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When he would see ants in the Lord's room, he would criticize Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for being a sweet eater, a voracious sweet eater. So if the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes into this world and has enemies, even though the scripture describes the Supreme Lord as Suhridam Sarvadehinam. Suhridam Sarvadehinam. The Supreme Lord is the well-wisher of every living entity. He's the best friend of every living entity. That is the position of the Supreme Lord. Because every living entity is part and parcel of Krishna. So how can Krishna hate his own part and parcel? Yet, even though Krishna is Surihidam Sarvadehinam, the well-wisher of all living entities, the best friend of all living entities, there are some living entities who decide to become enemies of the Lord. So how can we say that Yudhishthira Maharaj's enemies were never born? What about Duryodhana? Duryodhana was the bitterest enemy of Yudhishthira Maharaj from the very beginning. Even at the time of Yudhishthira Maharaj's birth, the enmity started between their mothers, actually. Because when Kunti brought forth Yudhishthira Maharaj, at that time, Gandhari was also pregnant. But the pregnancy was not forthcoming. She was expecting to deliver at the same time Yudhishthira Maharaj was to be delivered, but somehow it didn't happen. So from that moment, Gandhari was thinking, if Kunti delivers first before me, then his son will be the senior son of the family of the Kuru dynasty. And naturally, as a senior son, he becomes entitled to sit on the throne. So, Duryodhana is an avowed enemy of Yudhishthira Maharaj. Duryodhana, he built the house of lac in Varanavata, purposely to exterminate the Pandavas, purposely to annihilate the Pandu dynasty. He wanted to annihilate the 5 sons, their wife, and their mother. All of them, 7 of them, finished, so that there is no competition whatsoever. It was Vidura. At the time the Pandavas were leaving Hastinapur for Varanavarta, it was Vidura who approached Yudhishthira Maharaj and spoke to him in a Milecha language, a language nobody in the palace could understand. But the language could be understood only by Vidura and Yudhishthira Maharaj. So in that language, Vidura communicated to Yudhishthira Maharaj. He said, one who knows the scheme of his enemy should act in such a way as to avoid danger. He who knows that there are sharp weapons capable of cutting the body understands the means of avoiding them. And such a person is never harmed. One who is given a weapon by his enemy that is not made of steel can escape his enemies by making his abode like that of a jackal that lives in holes under the ground. He further on said that by wandering, a man can acquire some knowledge, a certain kind of knowledge. But by the stars, one can ascertain the direction one has to go. So by wandering, one ascertains a certain amount of knowledge. By traveling, one gains some information. In other words, while Yudhishthira Maharaj and his brothers and his mother and wife were traveling, they have to seek knowledge. And the stars should guide them. The stars should give them direction. Because it is said that Purochana, the agent of Duryodhana, was asked to set the house of luck on fire on the 14th day of the dark moon. So here, Vidura is saying that the stars should give us direction. The stars should guide us. So in this way, Vidura gave some hints to Yudhishthira Maharaj, spoken in a Malayalam language that nobody could understand. It is said that even though the other brothers of Yudhishthira were present, and Kunti Devi, she was present, Draupadi, she was present, but no one could understand the language or the meaning of the message that Vidura had given to Yudhishthira Maharaj. So, after Vidura had left the Pandavas, Kunti Devi approached Yudhishthira Maharaj and asked him, "What was your uncle saying? What were you discussing? What was he referring to? Could you please intimate me on the information your uncle gave you?" So in other words, the language that was spoken was coded. It was a coded language, and nobody else could understand it. So the Mahabharata says it's a Malayalam language, a language not spoken by civilized men. But Yudhishthira Maharaj could understand that language, and Vidura could understand that language. And so they communicated in that language. Because Vidura did not want Duryodhana nor any member of the palace to hear that message. Why was he doing this? Because Duryodhana was an avowed enemy of Yudhishthira Maharaj. So when Yudhishthira Maharaj explained the meaning of the conversation and what they were going to meet in Varanavata, immediately Bhima told Yudhishthira, then if that is the case, we don't need to live in that house. If that house is made of lac, and it is meant to be burned down by Purochana on the 14th day of the dark moon and kill all of us, then why don't we find some other place to stay? Why do we have to live in this house? And the wise Yudhishthira Maharaj said, the plan of Duryodhana is to have all of us killed. So if we don't stay in that house, the indication is that we are aware of their plan. And so that is why we did not stay in that house. And so Duryodhana will arrange some spies to find them out wherever they are, and they will have them eliminated. Because the Pandavas, they had no rank and power. They had no friends and allies. They had no wealth and influence. But Duryodhana had great power. He had great allies and friends. He had great wealth and influence. Therefore, he could easily eliminate the Pandavas. So therefore, Yudhishthira Maharaj said, we will go to that house. We will stay in that house. But we have to find a way to escape that place so that nobody will know that we escaped. Duryodhana will think that we have been killed in that fire. Then when we escape, then we can now build our strength. We can now prepare properly. And when we come back, then we can face them. But at this juncture, we have no friends, we have no allies, we have no wealth, we have no power, we have no influence, and therefore, we can easily be wiped out. Therefore, Yudhishthira Maharaj had an enemy. All these arrangements were done by an enemy, Duryodhana. Duryodhana had built the house of lac, combustible house, and he had planted Puruchana there to make sure while the Pandavas were asleep on the 14th day of the waning moon, the dark fortnight, the house will be set on fire and the whole Pandava family will be burnt to death. So how can we say that Yudhishthira Maharaj's enemy was never born? So that means Yudhishthira Maharaj was such an exalted personality, he never considered anybody his enemy. Yudhishthira Maharaj was such an exalted Vaishnava that he never considered anyone to be his enemy. Even though Duryodhana and his brothers and their father, Dhritarashtra, were planning to eliminate them, yet Yudhishthira Maharaj, he did not consider them his enemies. And that shows the very exalted position of Yudhishthira Maharaj. It is said that there are three kinds of Vaishnavas. In a conversation between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the devotees from Kulinagram, sometimes called Srikant. Every year, devotees from Bengal would go to Puri to participate in the yearly Ratha Yatra festival. And Shivananda Sena was the leader of this group. He would bring all the devotees all the way from Shantipur through Navadvip, through Srikant, Kulinagrama, Ekachakra, all the devotees along the way. Shivananda Sena will bring them to Puri, and he would pay their expenses. They will always walk from Bengal to Puri, and they will cross many rivers, and they will cross many kingdoms. And every kingdom they had to pay dues and taxes to cross from one kingdom to another kingdom, from one empire to another empire, to cross from from one side of the river to another river. And Shivananda Sena would pay the expenses of every devotee, and he would feed them from the beginning of the journey to the end of the journey and back. So the devotees from Srikant or Kulina Grama, they were headed by Satyaraj Khan. So it is said that in the first year, the devotees from Kulina Grama asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu a question: who is a Vaishnava? And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, anyone who chants the Hare Krishna mantra once should be respected as a Vaishnava. So they took that answer. And then the following year, when they came again, the devotees from Kulina Grama, headed by Satyaraj Khan, asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is a Vaishnava? The same question. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave another answer. He said, anyone who is always chanting the holy names of Krishna, he is a Vaishnava, and he should be worshipped. All obeisances should be offered to him, and one should seek his association. In the third year, the same question was asked to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Who is a Vaishnava? And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, that person by whose association one is inspired to chant, that person in whose association one is compelled to think of Krishna, that person in whose association our Krishna consciousness is revived, that is the topmost Vaishnava, and he deserves all our worship and honor. So in this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu described three kinds of Vaishnavas. Ramakari kahe Prabhu, Vaishnava Lakshanaha, Vaishnava Vaishnavatara, Ara Vaishnava Tamaha. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu drew distinctions between three types of Vaishnavas: a Vaishnava, a Vaishnavatara, and a Vaishnavatama. A Vaishnava is a devotee in good standing, a worshipper of Lord Vishnu in good standing. A Vaishnavatara is a better Vaishnava, a devotee of superior quality, a devotee who is constantly remembering Krishna. He cannot forget remembering Krishna for a moment. So he is a better Vaishnava than the Vaishnava in good standing. And then Vaishnava Tama means the best of all Vaishnavas. Param Vaishnav, Mahabhagavat, Vaishnav Shreya is the best of the Vaishnavas. Such a devotee is very dear to the Lord. Actually, such a devotee, Krishna worships such a devotee. Krishna sees that devotee to be superior to him. A Vaishnava Tama. So Yudhishthira Maharaj was such a Vaishnava. Was a Vaishnava Tama, a superior Vaishnava. And therefore, he has no enemy. He has no enemy. His enemy was not born. Chanakya Pandit, in his wise sayings, also described 4 types of enemies in a family, natural enemies in a family. Rina Karta Pita Shatru, Mata Chavya Bicharini, Varya Rupavati Satru, Putra Satru Apanditaha. So there are 4 kinds of enemies in a family. And who are they? A father who is a debtor. A father who is a debtor is an enemy of the family. He will die and leave a debt for their family to carry. He would put their family into debt before leaving the world. Therefore, he is an enemy, he's a natural enemy of the family. An unchaste wife, a woman who is having affairs with other men, even though the husband is alive, the husband is present, he's an enemy because he is simply courting trouble for the husband. The paramours will plan to kill the husband if they are enjoying the wife's association, and the husband is likely to be an obstacle. Even the woman will plan with the paramours to kill the husband. And we have seen these things in history. So an unchaste wife is a natural enemy in the family. A beautiful wife is also an enemy. Why a beautiful wife is an enemy? Because he will be attracted by many other men. And because many other men are attracted to her beauty, she may be lured into becoming an unchaste wife, and that will lead to the death of the husband. Then the last enemy is a foolish son. Putra Shatru Apanditaha. Apanditaha means one who is not learned, one who is a fool. So a son who is not learned, a son who is not educated in the scriptures, a son who does not know the science of devotional service is a big fool. He can commit any type of crime. He can cause any havoc in the family because he has no knowledge. And therefore, such a son, Chanakya Pandit describes him as a natural enemy of the family. So, since the verse says Yudhishthira Maharaj's enemy was never born, that also indicates that there were no such natural enemies in the family of Yudhishthira Maharaj. He was not a debtor father. He did not have an unchaste wife. Yes, Draupadi was so beautiful. She was very beautiful. She was desired by many Kshatriyas. I think Duryodhana wanted to marry her, but he could not. Even Karna wanted to marry her, but he could not. Arjuna won the Swayamvar ceremony and became the suitor of Draupadi. So she was very beautiful, but she was very chaste. She was a devotee of Krishna. She was very loyal. So much so that even the queens of Dwaraka, when they met Draupadi, they had to take lessons from Draupadi. Because Draupadi was such a wonderful lady that he could keep his 5 husbands under control. He managed his 5 husbands in such a way there was never a dispute, never a misunderstanding between the husbands. But the 16,108 queens of Dwaraka, they were having a tough time taking care of one husband, Krishna. So the queens of Dwaraka, they had to take notes, they had to take lessons from Draupadi. So even though Draupadi was such a beautiful lady, but she was very chaste, she was very loyal, and above all, she was a staunch devotee of Krishna. And so Krishna demonstrated his love for Draupadi by incarnating as a sari when she was to be derobed in the assembly of the Kauravas or the Kauravas. Krishna incarnated as a sari, unlimited sari, that the Kauravas could not pull to an end in order to expose the nakedness of Draupadi. So obviously, Yudhishthira Maharaj had no such a natural enemy at home. He was not a debtor himself. He had no unchaste wife, even though their wife was so beautiful, but her beauty was in her Krishna consciousness. Her beauty was her devotion to Krishna. And he had no son that was a fool. Therefore, Yudhishthira Maharaj's enemy was never born. So therefore, we need to understand the position of Yudhishthira Maharaj. Yudhishthira Maharaj was such an exalted Vaishnava. It is said that when Yudhishthira Maharaj performed the Rajasuya sacrifice, demigods from the 3 planetary systems all attended at the altar of Yudhishthira Maharaj's Rajasuya sacrifice. Yad dharma sunur bhata Rajasuye niriksha drik trilokaha. When Yudhishthira Maharaj was performing his Rajasuya sacrifice, all the demigods from all the 3 planetary systems, they all assembled at the sacrificial arena or altar of Yudhishthira Maharaj just to witness the wonderful performance of this Rajasuya sacrifice. And in that sacrifice, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was worshipped. Actually, the intention of Rajasuya performed by Yudhishthira Maharaj was to declare the supreme position of Krishna. It was meant to offer the first worship to Krishna. So the whole purpose of that yagya, Rajasuya yagya, was for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore, we can see that Yudhishthira Maharaj is very exalted. It is also mentioned that Yudhishthira Maharaj was actually none different from Yamaraj. He was the son of Yamaraj, Dharmaputra. Yamaraj is one of the Mahajans, 12 Mahajans that know the science of devotional service. They are the authorities of the scriptures. And therefore, being a son of a Mahajana, he was also a Mahajana. And for some time, it is said that Yudhishthira Maharaj was an expansion of Yamaraj. And so we see that when they were in the forest and they were thirsty and they were looking for water to drink, and they finally saw some lake of water somewhere, and then they sent their brothers to go and bring the water. And all the brothers went. And when they wanted to drink the water, a yaksha will come out and ask them some questions. And if they could not answer the questions, they had to die. All the brothers were killed. Nakula, Sahadev, Arjuna, Bhima, they were all killed by the yaksha. And when Yudhishthira Maharaj waited and waited and his brothers were not coming, he decided to go himself. And when he got there, he was so thirsty. Immediately he wanted to drink the water. The yaksha came out, or the voice of the yaksha said, don't touch that water until you have fulfilled the conditions for drinking the water. You have some questions to answer. And only when you have answered those questions correctly can you drink the water. Otherwise, you will fall dead like your other 4 brothers. So Yudhishthira Maharaj was such a devotee. He was such a Vaishnava. He had control over his senses. He was very deep in his understanding. So he did not follow the path of his brothers. The brothers could not tolerate the test. They could not bear the test. And even though the yaksha's voice warned them, they went ahead and drank the water and they fell dead. But Yudhishthira Maharaj, when he heard that voice, immediately he controlled himself because he is Vaishnava Tama. He is the best of Vaishnavas. And so he answered all the questions of the yaksha so nicely that the yaksha was compelled to bring his 4 brothers back to life. And then eventually the yaksha manifested as Ramaraj, Yamaraj himself. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is such an exalted personality. In fact, it's also mentioned that he and Vidura, they know themselves. And that is interesting. They spoke a language that nobody can understand. So it is said here they spoke a Malacha language. They spoke a coded language that nobody can understand. Because Vidura and Vidura and Yudhishthira are from one source. Vidura is Yamaraj, and Yudhishthira is a son of Yamaraj, an expansion of Yamaraj. Actually, it is said that when Vidura wanted to leave this world, he actually merged into Yudhishthira Maharaj. When Yudhishthira Maharaj was looking for his uncles, he found them on the banks of the Ganges. He saw Dhritarashtra, he saw Gandhari, he saw his own mother, but he could not find Vidura. And so he went on searching, and then he found Vidura sitting right on the bank of the Ganges with a stone in his mouth, meaning that he has taken the vow of Mauna, the vow of silence. When somebody puts a stone in his mouth, it means he's not ready to eat, he's not ready to talk. He has taken this vow of silence, and he will remain in that position without food or talking or drinking until he dies. It's a very heavy austerity. So Yudhishthira Maharaj saw Vidura with a stone in his mouth, and he paid obeisances to Vidura and wanted to ask him some questions. But all of a sudden, he saw the spirit of Vidura. It had left him and had merged into the body of Yudhishthira Maharaj. So we can understand that Vidura and Yudhishthira Maharaj are one personality. And therefore, Yudhishthira Maharaj is a very, very exalted person. And such exalted persons, their enemies are never born. So Prabhupada went on to say in the purport that Maharaj Yudhishthira was the most pious king because he personally practiced daily the pious duties of the householders. The pious duties of the householders are called Grihastha Dharma. Grihastha Dharma. In the 11th canto of the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, it is mentioned, Vedyaya Swadra Swaha, Bali Anandai Yatodayam, Devarishi Priti Bhutani, Mat Rupani, Aham Yajat. One in the Grihastha order of life should daily worship the sages by Vedic study. The forefathers by offering them the mantra Swada. The demigods by chanting Swaha, by performing fire sacrifice and chanting Swaha. All living entities by offering the shares of their own meals. And for human beings, they should offer them grains and water. Thus, considering the demigods, the sages, the forefathers, living entities, and human beings to be the manifestations of the potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one should perform these activities daily. So, it is said that when one takes birth in this material world, he immediately becomes a debtor. And by performing these activities, one liquidates his debt. If one does not liquidate his debt before his death, then it is said that one will go to hell. Therefore, it is said, Rinais tribi dijut jato devarishi pritranam prabhu. The members of the twice-born classes, they have three kinds of debts. Those owed to the demigods, those owed to the sages, and those owed to the forefathers. If one leaves his body without first liquidating these debts by performance of sacrifice, by studying the scriptures, and by begetting children, he will fall down into a hellish condition of life. So every householder is supposed to perform these duties of pious duties of the Grihastha Dharma. And what are those pious duties? One has to worship the sages by Vedic study. By studying the Vedas, we worship the sages. Actually, we all owe the sages. The sages, they compile the scriptures for us. So we owe them. We are indebted to them. And the only way we can liquidate that debt is to meticulously study the scriptures. So every Grihastha must study the scriptures in order to liquidate his debt to the sages. One must offer a mantra called Swada to the forefathers. And that also includes begetting good children for the continuity of the family dynasty. So one pleases the forefathers by chanting specific mantras in offering prasadam to them, and by begetting very good children. One liquidates the debts to the demigods by performing fire sacrifice, by chanting the mantra that ends in Swaha. Swaha is the wife of Agni. And one cannot perform sacrifice without chanting the name of Swaha. So by performing yagya every day, one worships the demigods and one liquidates his debt to the demigods. For other living entities, one should share his meals with those living entities. And for human beings, one should give grains and water to these living entities. Of course, the Brahmanas, one should give them wealth one should give them grains, one should give them cows, one should give them gold. So in this way, one can liquidate his debt, the 5 types of debts that one inherits as soon as you take birth in this material world. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, being such an exalted Vaishnava, he is setting the example for all householders to follow. And that is the reason why Krishna had to organize the Battle of Kurukshetra to make sure such an exalted Vaishnava became the emperor of the world. Krishna went to any length and every length to make sure that the Pandavas, who were his devotees, won the battle, and Yudhishthira Maharaj was made the king, the emperor of the world. Krishna wanted his devotee, his great devotee, Yudhishthira Maharaj, to occupy the throne of the world. And so he did what he had to do to make sure that the Pandavas won the battle. And Yudhishthira Maharaj, as an exemplary devotee, as an exemplary king, he is setting the example for us here by the performances he does every day. In the morning, he rises early in the morning, he offers prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he offers fire sacrifice to the sun god and other demigods, he offers obeisances to the elderly people, he gives grains, cows, land, and gold to the brahmanas, he gives food to the other living entities, and for other living beings, human beings, he gives them grains and water. In this way, Yudhishthira Maharaj set such a sterling example for the householder. By following this, a householder can be liberated. Finally, it is said that when the Pandavas left Hastinapur, when they retired and they were walking up the Himalayas, all the brothers were dropping one by one. Even Bhima, who is very powerful in strength, he dropped. Arjuna dropped. Arjuna, thinking himself a great warrior, he never thought he would drop, but he dropped. The last person in the family was Yudhishthira Maharaj. Everybody dropped dead, but Yudhishthira Maharaj was going, and some strange dog was following him. So again, it shows the exalted position of Yudhishthira Maharaj. Even though he came from such an exalted family, he had such exalted brothers, Arjuna was Krishna's Saka. He was Krishna's dear friend, very intimate friend. But Yudhishthira Maharaj, he showed his devotional service when everyone dropped and Yudhishthira Maharaj alone went forward in pursuit of the final goal of human life. So therefore, we have to understand that Yudhishthira Maharaj is a very exalted personality, and because it's a very exalted personality, his enemy was never born. Because he's such a Vaishnava Tama, his enemy was never born. So the more we advance on the path of Krishna consciousness, the more we will become like Yudhishthira Maharaj. Even if people want to be our enemies, we don't see them as our enemies. That is the example here that Yudhishthira Maharaj is setting. Actually, a Vaishnava has no enemies. A Vaishnava is a well-wisher of everyone else. A Vaishnava is para dukkha dukhi. He's very eager to make everyone happy. He's very happy when he sees everyone happy, and he's very sad when he sees that somebody is struggling, somebody is going through some pain. So therefore, a Vaishnava, he is a well-wisher of everyone else. As we see His Divine Grace, like A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, when he would sign a letter, he would say, your ever well-wisher. That is the position of such an exalted Vaishnava. And therefore, for such a Vaishnava, his enemy was never born. On this note, we will want to end here. If there are any questions or comments, they are most welcome. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, Prabhuji. That was such a very, very wonderful, beautiful class. And I wish, sometimes certain things happen in one's life that makes one actually realize that if not all, but lots of the things we read from the scriptures are really true. Last 2 Mondays ago, I do SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM a class from Mayapur.
Okay.
And my teacher, Padmanayan Prabhu, he presented the Bhagavatam in such a sweet manner. I was almost crying. And I was thinking to myself, what he was saying, it wasn't something I haven't heard before. But the way he said it, and the love that was coming through what he was saying, it's just like what you're saying today, Prabhuji. Of course, in today's class, there are many things you said that I didn't know. But even the few that I knew, they appear so new, so sweet, so different. And I was saying, Christ said when he was tempted by the devil, Satan, to turn stones to bread. He told Satan, he says, man does not live by bread alone, but also by the word of God. And like that Monday and today, I mean, the word of God, it's like food. It's so, so nourishing. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your encouragement.
It's amazing, Krishna. I mean, so this kind of tells us how Ananta Sesha himself says he doesn't have sufficient mouth to speak about the glories of Krishna. And we can't have sufficient ears to hear about the glories of Krishna. Oh, Krishna. Shri Ganga Prashad Prabhu, please, you may unmute. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Dandava Pranam.
Hare Krishna,
Obeisance at your lotus feet.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Prabhupada, all glories to Prabhupada. Thank you very much for this combo pack of lecture. It has a lot of content and they are very, very edifying. I got a little bit conscientized when you said Yudhishthira was setting an example for householders. And it gives me curiosity in the sense that not only was Yudhishthira acting as a householder, but he was also acting in capacity of a king. So his model is a dual model.
That's right.
That is not exclusively for household, because not every householder, especially in our own geographical location, can afford to give gold, cow, land, and etc. to Brahmanas. So I got a little bothered that it's such a lofty thing that maybe it's not in this lifetime that we can live up to it. But I just wanted you to give us some kind of encouragement. Otherwise, we may go and find a transformer and embrace immediately.
Thank you for the comment. Thank you. Actually, it's true. Prabhupada specifically mentions here that because he's a pious king, Prabhupada mentions that again and again in the purport, that because he's a pious king, what is it? So because it's a pious king. In the first line said, Maharaj Yudhishthira was the most pious king because he personally practiced daily the pious duties of householders. That is the first part of the purport. The first part of the purport. It says, Yudhishthira Maharaj was the most pious king, and because he personally practiced daily the pious duties for the householders. The Prabhupada wanted to say the householders are required to rise early in the morning, and after bathing, they should offer respects to the deities at home by prayers, by offering fuel in the sacred fire, by giving the brahmanas in charity land, cows, grains, gold, etc., and at last offering to the elderly members due respects and obeisances. Yeah, Yudhishthira Maharaj is playing a dual role here. Besides being a householder, a pious householder, a dedicated householder, a Vaishnava householder, actually a Vaishnava householder, he was also a king. And in fact, Krishna wanted Yudhishthira Maharaj to be the emperor of the world because of his sterling qualities, because of his wonderful example that he was going to set for the world. So surely we are not in the position of Yudhishthira Maharaj to give such exalted gifts like gold, gold, it says gold, grains, land, and so on, cows, animals. We don't have all these to give, but at least we should as householders, because in ISKCON, 95% of members of ISKCON are householders, maybe even more. A very insignificant percentage are sannyasis, and a certain percentage are brahmacharis. And when it comes to even vanaprasthas, they are very, very insignificant. So the majority of members of ISKCON are grihastas. And Srila Prabhupada makes some very significant statements somewhere. It says, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is training householders, sannyasis, brahmacharis, and vanaprasthas to engage in a 24-hour loving service of the Lord. Those who are full-time missionary workers in ISKCON have no further obligations or sacrifices to perform, as mentioned in the 11th canto of the SRIMAD Bhagavatam. And what is the verse? It says, Devarishi Bhutatma Nrinam Pritanam Nakin Karo Nayam Rine Cha Rajan. Anyone who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of Mukunda, the giver of liberation, giving up all kinds of obligations, has taken to the path in all seriousness, owes neither duties nor obligations to the demigods, to the sages, to general living entities, to family members, to humankind, or to forefathers. So the example Yudhishthira Maharaj has set for us is that a householder living at home must perform these activities daily. He must rise early in the morning, offer prayers to the deities, offer fuel to the sacrificial fire. In other words, worship the demigods. He must offer some gifts to food to the living entities, grains to human beings, and there's some other superior gifts to the Brahmanas, study the scripture as a way of worshiping the sages, and then chant the Swada mantra for the pleasure of the fourth fathers. So, but those who are full-time under the training of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, because they are fully engaged in such activities, it is said here that they have no other obligation because they are rendering service directly to Mukunda, the personality who gives liberation to everyone. So, since majority of us are not kings, we are not expected to give gold. We are not expected to give such exalted gifts. But at least we can show respect to others by giving them Krishna Prasadam, by asking about their welfare, even just asking the welfare of devotees, release them of some anxiety. When somebody somebody understands that somebody is sharing his grief, sharing his problem, sharing his anxiety with him, it is said that the burden of that anxiety reduces. And that is why it is said that when you share your problem with another person, immediately your anxiety or your problem is borne by two persons. And when you share with a third person, the burden is divided among three persons. So by rendering service to the devotees, by asking about their welfare, by doing whatever is possible to lessen the burden, that is a great service rendered to the devotees, and Krishna is most pleased by such actions. And of course, if we are full-time preachers, then we don't owe anybody anything, because you are concentrating fully on the worship of the Supreme Personality of Mukunda. And therefore, one is said to be nakinkaro nayam. One does not owe anyone. One does not become a servant to anyone, because he has become the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Yudhishthira Maharaj actually sets three examples here. As a Vaishnava, a superior Vaishnava, he has no enemy, even though Duryodhana was a bitter enemy planning how to kill him. Yudhishthira Maharaj did not see Duryodhana as an enemy. He also demonstrated that as a householder, you must do your duty as a householder, and rise up early, worship the deities, offer sacrifice to the demigods, offer food grains to human beings, worship the Brahmanas by giving them gifts. And then, as a king, he had to show what it is to be an ideal king. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is actually showing us three examples: as a devotee, as a householder, and as a king. We may not be able to do all of these things, but at least we can do something. We can become Vaishnavas of the caliber of Yudhishthira Maharaj. We can become householders and rise up early to chant Hare Krishna and perform our duties. And of course, if we have the facility, we have the means, then we can also distribute some gifts to devotees as well. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. I am very encouraged.
Yeah.
I'm very encouraged. Otherwise, I was looking for the nearby transformer.
Oh no, please don't do that. Please don't do that. You are representing Srila Prabhupada. You are representing your spiritual master. You are a source of inspiration for many devotees in Otta. How can you go and embrace a transformer? If you do that, you sacrifice many people's spiritual life. So please stay and inspire people to follow the path of bhakti. That's all that you need to do. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
If I'm allowed to speculate, I'm thinking that, of course, Srila Prabhupada himself dwelt so much in the purport about householders, grihastas.
Yes.
And I'm thinking Srila Prabhupada did that because in mathematics, there is a lesson called sets.
Yeah.
So we have universal set and we have subset.
Yes.
And these subsets are all bits and pieces of the universal set.
The universal set, yes.
And so I'm thinking that since there cannot be a king without a queen, a king must definitely be a grihasta.
That's right.
So once you are a grihasta, then whether you are a poor, rich, or whatever, then you have to follow this example.
That's true. That's true.
That's what my speculative mind is telling me.
No, it's true. Prabhupada emphasized more on the aspect of the grihasta. It's true. Yeah. So, yeah, you cannot be a king without being a grihasta.
Yeah.
In fact, in Priyavrata, when Priyavrata was meditating in the forest, and there was a need for him to become a king, he was forced to get married. He was like a sannyasi meditating in the forest, and then there was nobody to rule the kingdom. So they had to go for him from the forest to come and become the king. And as a king, there was no way he could stay on the throne as a sannyasi. So he had to get married. Brahma had to create a special woman for him to marry. And so but he was afraid that when he gets married, he will become entangled. But Brahma said, no, you will never get entangled. Just do your duty as a king and remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you will never get entangled. And Priyavrata followed the order of Brahma, and he was never entangled.
But I have a question on incarnations.
Yeah.
Like when we say this demigod incarnated as this, like Vidura, we understand is the incarnation of Yamaraj.
Yeah.
And there are some incarnations when that particular being incarnates, he still is available in his original abode.
Oh, yes.
Like in the case of Yamaraj coming into this material world as Vidura, then Ariyama had to take over. And there is also this story about when Indra, I think that was not an incarnation, he was cursed actually to take the body of a pig or a hog.
Of a hog, yes.
Yeah. Now somebody else had to take
over the kingdom.
Take over. But there are other times too, they can be ruling or doing whatever they always do and still incarnate. So I just want to know, what is the difference between such incarnations?
Well, it is said that when Krishna wants to use them in a particular way to achieve some goal, some mission, then Lord empowers them to incarnate, to expand, actually. He empowers them to expand so that the original form is there, but the expansion is also there. And so the original form is performing his duties all right, and then expanded form is also executing some mission somewhere. So that facility is actually given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, but when he wants to use a demigod, a particular, even a devotee, it is said that some devotees who were with Krishna during his Leela in Vrindavan, some or even in Dwaraka, some were expansions of some devotees. Yeah, so those original forms are in a spiritual world, and the expansions are with Krishna in this world. I think somewhere I've read that even Uddhava, the original form of Uddhava is there, but another expansion was with Krishna. And so that is why we even hear that Uddhava is still in Vrindavan. Uddhava has turned into a blade of grass, because when Uddhava visited Vrindavan and saw the devotion of the Brajavasis, he was actually humbled that he desired to remain in Vrindavan as a blade of grass, so that the Brajavasis will trample on him and the dust from their lotus feet will settle on his head. And so Uddhava remains in Vrindavan. And when Krishna had disappeared from the planet, and Kalendi was not showing any sign of separation, she was still jolly. The other queens were surprised, and they confronted Kalendi. We have all lost our husbands, but you seem to be so jolly. You are so happy. What is the secret? Tell us. And Kalendi said, the secret is to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. The secret is to hear the glories of Krishna. If you hear the glories of Krishna, if you hear the Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll be so satisfied, because there's no difference between Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna. And so the queen said, so where do we hear the Srimad Bhagavatam? And he said, go to Govardhan. Go and perform kirtan. If you perform kirtan, very strong kirtan, Uddhava will come out from his hideout and he will speak Srimad Bhagavatam for your hearing. And when you hear from Uddhava, your lamentation will be gone. So it was arranged, and all the queens went to Vrindavan, and they went to Govardhan. They went to Uddhava Charita, where Uddhava is hiding, and they performed a very strong, powerful, sweet kirtan that Uddhava came out and spoke Bhagavatam to the queens of Krishna. And when they heard Bhagavatam from the lips of Uddhava, they were completely satisfied, and all their anxiety and lamentation were gone. So even though Uddhava is still in this world, but Uddhava is also in the spiritual world. So by Krishna's arrangement, Krishna's empowerment, a devotee can multiply himself a number of times, and also the demigods can also multiply themselves a number of times to execute different roles for the Lord.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you. Sri Hari Chakra Prabhu, please unmute. Hari Chakra. Okay. Please go ahead.
We're not hearing you.
We are not hearing you, Hari Chakra. All right, Anadi Nidanam Prabhu, please unmute and ask your question. Anadi Nidanam.
Okay, yeah. Arisham, all right.
Hare Krishna, Anadini Nidanam Prabhu. What is your
Thank
question?
you very much for.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for your wonderful question. But actually, I was enjoying you.
No,
So,
we are all enjoying Prabhupada.
actually,
We are enjoying Krishna's Krishna Lila, Krishna's Katha, Hari Katha from Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you. Thank you. So I have two questions. My first one has to do with actually BDD Maharaj said something. He said, sin destroy the sinner, but offense destroy both the offender and his entire generation. So first of all, what is the difference between sin and offense? And how does sin destroy only the sinner, but offense destroy both the offender and his entire generation? This is my first question.
Thank you for your question. The difference between offense and sin. Sin means that you have violated the norms or principles, or you have gone against a certain order of things. So we can say sin is like a personalized activity, an activity you've performed, a wrong activity you performed, and it pertains to you alone. So therefore, the result of that sin, the reaction of that sin destroys only the performer of the sin. But offense means that you have not only committed a sin, but you actually done some harm to a very elevated or to a devotee or to the Lord. Offense means doing something against the Lord, doing something against the devotee. That's why we have offenses to the holy name, offenses to deity worship, offenses to the holy dam, and so on. So once you commit an offense, it goes a long way. And so the offense, the reaction to the offense is very severe. That's what it means. The reaction to a sin is very limited. It only affects the performer of the sin. For instance, let's say, for example, if somebody commits an illicit sex or he murders somebody, the reaction is on his head. But when you commit an offense in chanting, commit an offense in the deity worship, commit an offense against a devotee, the reaction is very serious. It does not only destroy the person who commits the offense, but it affects the family of the person who commits the offense. And that shows how serious it is to commit an offense. And that is why one should be very careful to avoid offenses. And we see that Sanatana Goswami in the Hari Bhakti Vilas mentions so many offenses that one has to avoid in the practice of Krishna consciousness, so that he does not bring calamity to himself and calamity to his family. So offense is more severe than sin. Sin brings a personalized reaction, but offense brings a very serious reaction that affects even the members of the family of the offender. Like we see the offense committed by Daksha. Daksha committed a very serious Vaishnava parade. He offended Lord Shiva. And many people suffered. Bhaga, Brigu, many people suffered. Many people in that assembly, they suffered. Even to the degree that Sati had to leave the body. Sati, the daughter of Daksha, had to leave her body because she couldn't take it because of that offense. So an offense has more serious consequences than a sin. I don't know whether I have answered your question. I think Maharaj is on the platform. His Holiness Bhakti Damodara Maharaj is here.
Yes, Hare Krishna Maharaj is here.
And then he may be able to give you a satisfactory answer since he made that statement.
Yeah.
You have answered it, Prabhu. You gave a perfect answer.
Hare Krishna. Now your mercy.
It was perfect. Shilagogvina Maharaj gave example of a dust and a thunderbolt. Those you can use hand to clean it on the mirror, but a toilet bowl is very devastating. You cannot clean it with the hand. So, yeah, we give a perfect example. Daksha is offenses, not only all the family members, she took birth many times to suffer for thousands of years, to suffer for that reaction. It was a Godhead. So it's very, very dangerous. And Krishna was warning his Yadavas, family members in Yadavas, they should be very careful. And even if a Brahmana angry with you, you should not retaliate. You should never retaliate. Because it's very, very dangerous to steal something from a Brahmana. What if you steal from a Vaishnava? If you steal from if you take a Brahmana's property, 3 generations of family members will suffer. So for Vaishnavas, who knows how many lifetimes, how many generations of family? But most of us are doing that every day. Partisans, as Swami Thakur Prabhupada said, the easiest way and the surest way to go to hell is to offend devotees. Serious it is.
Well, Maharaj,
Okay.
I have a follow-up question on this. Obviously, I believe every devotee knows, or at least believes, that offenses are very, very dangerous. And as both of you are helping us understand the difference between offense and sin, offense is much heavier, like you say, like a thunderbolt. But why would my offense cause an innocent soul to suffer? So that is where I'm not getting it. If that individual soul has not committed something for him to suffer, why should that soul suffer because of me? that is just my doubt. I don't
think that a devotee knows or believe, like you said. I don't think so. A devotee knows or believe, because if you knows and believe, you will never do it.
Yeah, of course.
Never.
Yeah.
So we are doing it because we don't know, we are ignorant.
Yeah.
That we don't have the knowledge. That is why we're doing it. His Holiday Ramaraj told us that when he went to meet Gurudev, the last few days before Gurudev left the planet, one of the things Gurudev told him was that we are very offensive. It was our problem. So I don't think that we know. I will not say that we know. We strongly believe. We don't. If we do, we will not be like this. We will be very, very, very careful. And then you are saying that innocent person. I don't see with innocence. If I okay, so all of us are here now. If all of us are here and say in the temple, all of us are here. If I do something wrong, what will people say?
They will say Hare Krishna.
Yes, they will say Hare Krishna. People they fight.
Yeah.
They will not say that one rascal person did it. It's all these Hare Krishna people they fight.
Yeah.
So that is collective. Any environment we are, whatever we do is a big message. We'll take it. So that's why devotees should be careful. I will relate. So we are not innocent. If you're innocent, you will not be born in that family.
Yeah. You see, but with my little mind, of course, I've been thinking about this many times. But my thinking is not right anyway. But what I'm thinking is that if I committed an offense in my previous life, And that offense dictates that I should have rascal children. My children should torment me. I pray Krishna doesn't let this happen. I'm just giving an example.
Yeah.
If I committed an offense in my previous life, and then in this life, my offense warrants that my children should torment me like hell, why should the children torment me and torment themselves if they themselves have not also caused a situation that warrants them to suffer? So I'm thinking that somebody, like Arichakra Prabhu used to give this analogy that somebody slaps me, it weighs 10 pounds. I slap him back. And then instead of slapping him 10 pounds, I slapped him 15 pounds. So now there is 5 extra pounds. Now that 5 extra pounds, somebody else has to give it back to me. And there is somebody else who is also wishing or desiring that I don't care if somebody misbehaves like this, I'm going to give him this slap. And then nature arranges for that person to come across me, and then he will give me the slap because his desire is being fulfilled. His desire is being fulfilled. But what I'm trying to say is that there is some sort of union from one person to the other person for the effect to take place. That's my little understanding. If I'm wrong, maybe you can give a better enlightenment on this, because I still find it difficult that, like Maharaj was saying, nobody is innocent. If somebody is not innocent, then it means that that person too might have committed something that warrants him to suffer, and then is being directed by laws of nature to come through a particular person.
Yes, we are all connected. Everything is connected. Chitraketu's son, Chitraketu's son and Chitraketu, they were enemies in their previous life, but this lifetime they were father and son. They didn't pay their karma for each other they passed. They have to come and complete it this lifetime. So all of us are connected. Everything, your child, your daughter, your father, your mother, friends, whatever, everything, we are all connected. The country you are born in, everything is the same. Nothing is free, and no one is innocent. We are all connected. We're having experience we're having. If you take up managing a temple, and that temple has billions, will you complain?
No.
You say, this is my karma, is it not? But you know, this is my karma. If there's no money there, then the whole world will know about it. What this company is there? Why they send me to this place, they send me to another place, why they come here, this is a bad leader and everything is bad. But if the billions there, you keep quiet. You say, it's my karma.
Yes. Thank you so much, Marak, talking about Chitraketu and the sons. See, I sometimes think that, who knows, maybe 1 or 2 of my children are my enemies in previous life, and they are here to torment me, so I better be careful. I cannot just say, oh, this is my son, so whatever you say, whatever you do, I just let it go. I have to make sure that you're not doing anything to hurt me, because maybe you are here to hurt me. And the best way to get the opportunity to hurt me is to come to me as a son. Thank you so much, Maharaj. So, I don't know if Harichakra Prabhu, you there? You back? Harichakra Prabhu.
Actually, I have a follow-up question.
Hare Krishna, sir.
Hare Krishna, yes. Okay, please.
Can I ask my
Yes,
question?
yes, yes.
Yeah, I was surprised you were not hearing me at that time. My question is,
sorry.
My question, thank you, SRIVAS VANACARI. I mean, this class is so enlivening. I mean, it's really put me on the edge now. My question is like a follow-up to Ganga Prashad's question that he asked.
Okay.
That sometimes when we hear all these things in the scripture, like all these exalted position of Yudhishthira and all this, I mean, sometimes if we are not careful, I mean, personally, this is how I feel. If I am not careful, it makes you like, oh, no matter what I do, I cannot get here. So what is the point? So what is the point? And sometimes, so I think it puts us in a position where we tend to become more ritualistic. It's like you hear, sometimes we hear certain stories in the scriptures, and some people perform certain rituals, and immediately it buttresses their well-being and all these things. Then, instead of becoming very devoted to Krishna, then we are so attracted to those ritualists. So I'm pleading, is there a way, like we know that all these things, sometimes we also hear that, oh, as Vaishnavas, all we have to do is to make sure we are dedicated to Guru and Krishna and just chant our rounds. And so I'm just pleading, if there is a way that these things, like you just narrated to us, how it can be toned in such a way that it actually encourages us, rather than to bringing us to a level where we think, oh, after all, what can I do? I'm Kali Yoga. There's nothing I can do. and instead of making the effort, we rather become frustrated and sit behind. So yeah, please help me.
Thank you very much for that question. Actually, Srila Prabhupada has given us the essence of all these different things, different authorities recommend. In fact, I remember I treated a section of SRIMAD Bhagavatam in the Bhaktivedanta class in Mayapur, and they were talking about this Payovrat. Payovrat is described in the 8th canto of the SRIMAD Bhagavatam, where Aditi wanted to win the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So she approached her husband, her exalted husband, Kasyapa Muni, to give her a special mantra, a special process, a special ritual sacrifice that she could perform in order to attract the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Kasyapa Muni narrated this Payovrat, and he said he also received it from Lord Brahma. So, and this Payovrat is a very strict, very rigid sacrifice. So, along the line, Srila Prabhupada, one purpose Srila Prabhupada said that what I have given to the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is the essence of this Payovrat. In other words, all that we have heard that Yudhishthira Maharaj was doing as an ideal devotee, ideal householder, an ideal king, Srila Prabhupada has given us. Rise up early, attend Mangalarati, chant your rounds, take care of the deities. If you have some work, you go to your work. And at the end of the month, end of the day, something is given to support the preaching, to support the temple, to serve the deities, to serve the Vaishnavas. And if you are a full-time preacher, then after your morning duties, then you have to get involved in preaching, getting into some book distribution or some preaching program, college preaching program, whatever program, in order to connect more people to this process of Krishna consciousness. So in essence, Srila Prabhupada has given us the essence of all of these rituals that we are hearing that Yudhishthira Maharaj was performing every day, or even the Payovrat that Aditi received from Kasyapa Muni and she performed it so nicely that he attracted Vamana Dev as his son. So in Kali Yuga, we do not have the capacity to perform all these strict vratas. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada has extracted the essence of these vratas and given it to us in the form of this Krishna conscious process. Now, from morning to evening, if we just follow what Prabhupada has given us, we are actually following that process that was followed by Yudhishthira Maharaj, or that process that was followed by Aditi Devi, or that process that was followed by some other personalities in the past, because the essence is what Srila Prabhupada has given us. Rise early in the morning, before 4 o'clock, take a shower, attend Mangalarati, sit down and chant your rounds, do some service for the deity, offer something to the deity, and then either you go preaching or you go working, and at the end of the day, something comes for the service of Krishna. If we just maintain this and we do it very religiously, we don't need to do anything else. The essence is to make Krishna happy. The essence is to think of ways and means we can make this Krishna consciousness attractive for the conditioned souls of the material world. That is our real business. Practice Krishna consciousness and give Krishna consciousness to others. That is the essence of this Krishna consciousness movement. And if we are able to do that, then it covers everything else. And that is why this statement of the 11th canto of the SRIMAD Bhagavatam comes up. Deva rishi butapta nrinam pritinam nakin karonayam reni nacha rajan. Anyone who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of Mukunda, the giver of liberation, given up all kinds of obligations, and has taken to the path in all seriousness, he owes neither duties to or obligations to the demigods, to the sages, to family members, to the general living entities, and even to the fourth fathers, because he has taken full shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda. So householders are required to rise early in the morning, and after bathing, they should offer respects to the deities at home, offer prayers, offer the fuel or sacrifice is the Harinam Sankirtan, the chanting of Japa, make some prashadam, offer to family members, accept prashadam, and then probably offer to other people, and then spread Krishna consciousness somehow or the other. And that is the essence of all of these rituals. And certainly one will achieve the goal of life, Krishna Prema, love of Godhead, and go back home, back to Godhead. Maharaj is here. He may like to add something.
Maharaj, you are muted. Okay, good.
Thank you, Prabhu. It's all right.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So Harichakra Prabhu, I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does.
Yes, it does, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
See, I'm seeing
very much, and I mean, like I said, now I'm a little bit at peace. My subtle body is at peace now, because now I know like Ganga Prashad, I'm not going to find a transformer and go and embrace it.
See, Prabhuji Maharaj, both of you are here today. See, I've been having this thought for some time now that, like Prabhuji were talking about this Paravyoma Vrata, as human beings trying to realize God, trying to seek after God, we want to see something so amazing, like so out of the world. And we're still looking for something like that. But Srila Prabhupada, like both of you are saying, has given us everything we need to go back home, back to Godhead in this lifetime. But he said he's packaged it so simple that it will fool so many of us. We have everything we need to go back home, but it's so simple. We're still looking for something else. And so I've been having this idea that maybe once in a month, as we have this 5 days a week, SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, maybe once in a month in this discourse, we can use that particular day to go address the basics. Because it seems some of us are trying to like hear some stories nobody has ever heard before. Some of us become so much distracted by so-called Radha Krishna Leela pastimes. If you do not talk about Radha Krishna, you are doomed. It's very dangerous. It's taking away so many devotees out of ISKCON. And so to safeguard devotees, I mean, nobody is trying to pollute or change anybody's mind, but if devotees are properly fed with what Srila Prabhupada has given us, and we understand that there is nothing better than what Srila Prabhupada has given us, then even though somebody may be looking somewhere else, but wherever he's looking is in comparison to what Srila Prabhupada has given us. If whatever I'm seeing or reading, I remember Krishna Bhaktisiddhanta Ramaraj oftentimes used to say that he's opportunistic. And so he challenged. He says, show me anything better than what Srila Prabhupada has given us, and I'll be the first person to grasp it. But most of us may not be there. Some of us, we see something flowering and we get distracted. So that's what I'm just thinking. If you all think it's proper, it's appropriate, maybe once in a month, you give us like a workshop, and then you just discuss what we have. And you tell people, you tell devotees that there is nothing in all the three worlds better than what Srila Prabhupada has given us. I think it will help.
Mara, what do you say?
All right.
We are speaking this every day. We are speaking that every day, sir. It's a good thing. It's not bad. You can do. Everything is here.
Yeah. Actually, I had some little experience when we were in the US many years ago, and then we had to attend the Ratha Yatra parade in Washington, D.C. You know, the Potomac Temple doesn't have much accommodation.
Yeah.
So devotees have to scatter themselves here and there to stay. So Mukunda, is it Mukunda?
Yes, Mukunda.
Mukunda.
Yes.
Former Ekendra Das.
Yes.
Yeah, he invited us to stay with him. So I told Gurudev that Mukunda is inviting us to his house to stay with him. And Gurudev said, well, since there's no accommodation at the temple,